So human history includes alien intervention. So here is Lou Elizondo on Theories of Everything with Kurt Jaimingal on October 21st, 2021.
Imagine everything you've been taught, uh, whether it's through Sunday school or through regular formal education in school, or what our political leaders have told us. And yes, even maybe our mothers and fathers around the dinner table have told us, or maybe at bedtime, about who we are, right? And our background and our past. What if all of that turned out to be not entirely accurate? In fact, the very history of our species, the meaning, what it means to be a human being and our place in this universe. What if all that is now in question? What if it turns out that a lot of the things that we thought were one way aren't? Are we prepared to have that honest question with ourselves? Are we prepared to recognize that we're not at the top of the food chain, potentially? That we're not the alpha predator, that we are maybe somewhere in the middle? What if it turns out that there's another species that is even higher on that ladder than we are? Do we need the social institutions that we have today? Will we need governmental and religious organizations that we have today if it turns out that there is something else or someone else that is technologically more advanced and perhaps from an evolutionary perspective more advanced? Have we been wasting our time all this time? Or are we doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing? Are we, does it turn out that mankind is in fact just another animal in the zoo? Or because we thought ourselves as a zookeeper before, but maybe we're just another exhibit inside the zoo. What would that mean to us? So when I say sombering and sobering, I mean that there's going to come a point in this conversation where we're going to have to do a lot of reconciling with ourselves, whatever that means, from whatever philosophical background you have. This is going to impact every single one of us the same and yet equally and yet differently. And I think that's important. Do we find ourselves in a situation where history may have to be rewritten? So that's what I meant.
So in part one of this presentation, I introduced the exobiospheric organism geneticist. Oh, sorry. I think it's actually really important to actually talk about this. So this is actually in reference to Lou Elizondo and his conversation he had with Kurt Jaimingal. On page 26 of The Rising, I could feel it meant a new era or age has come upon humanity. In the depth of the image, I could feel that humans are in a stage of evolution that was spiritual in nature, and at the center of this change was our collective planetary identity as human beings. Kind of similar to what Lou Elizondo talked about, where there's this fundamental philosophical change that has to happen, and that's in part what I'm convinced disclosure entails, and it's not just a learning about aliens. So in part one of this presentation, I introduced the exobiospheric organism geneticist. Please review that presentation to gain the credibility of this post. So it says, from the late 2000s to the mid-2010s, I worked as a molecular biologist for a national security contractor in a program to study exobiospheric organisms, EBO. I will share with you a lot of information on this subject. Feel free to ask questions or ask for clarification. So I went over this paragraph last presentation, but I'll repeat it again here today. The author of the document added his reflections and interpretations as an appendix. He specified that for them, which is the entities, the soul field is not a belief but an obvious truth. He argues that the soul loses its individuality after death, but that memory and experience persist as part of the field. This fact would influence the philosophy and culture of EBOs, resulting in a society that doesn't fear death, but which places no importance or reverence on individuality. This belief compels them to seed life, shape it, nurture it, monitor it, and influence it for the ultimate purpose of creating this apotheosis. Paradoxically, they have little or no respect for an individual's well-being. This belief compels them to seed life, shape it, nurture it, monitor it, and influence it for the ultimate purpose of creating an apotheosis, which is the elevation of someone to divine status, i.e. God realization. So I'm breaking down this sentence and as a way of understanding how the entities have actually been influencing us. So it says that they seed life. On October 1st, Yes Theory interviewed David Grush.
Studied physics. I became kind of agnostic. I was like, I don't know about all this kind of woo-woo, stuff that the church espouses and stuff. And then, oddly enough, I've kind of come full circle in some sense where there is this higher sentience. There seems to be, I think we're created beings in some manner, whether it be some panspermia from little g gods or big G gods.
Just a tiny little spot where he says that. And it is definitely worth playing, even if it's a tiny little, because, he has he's the head of the Department of Defense. So that was a pretty important thing that he said. And of my book, In the Rising, page 40, the elder tells me, we have also made the human bodies for your earth, for your souls to live in. And we did this a long time ago in an ancient era. She said this with a telepathic impression of tens of thousands of years ago. John Ramirez. John Ramirez served in the CIA from 1984 to 2009. At the CIA, he was an intelligence analyst in the Chief Electronic Intelligence Analyst Branch, specializing in ballistic missile defense weapon systems, radars, and technical collections operations. He also claims to be an experiencer. Very interesting. So John Ramirez appeared on Project Unity podcast November 2nd, 2021, where he opined that humans are hybrids. According to him, Elizondo is unable to use the word hybridization, but the Pentagon employees are counting on him to do so eventually. This would imply that we have all forgotten about our past, which would hide the possibility that we are hybrids of humans and extraterrestrials. On the Unidentified Celebrity Review, December 2021, John Ramirez said he was part of a CIA presentation in which, after World War II, the CIA had become aware that humans are in fact alien hybrids, and that certain genetic lines have greater augmentations than others. He says, after World War II, they discovered that humans are hybrids. We are all hybrids. Some are more hybridized than others. They told us that they know there are certain family genetic lines that have been hybridized to a great extent than others. Somebody told us, he said. I'm very confident the government is sitting on this. In order to understand the UAP in its entirety, where it came from, why they are here, who's driving them, you have to go back to, what's our role? Why are they talking to us? Why do they want to interact with us? You got to build that bridge to the fact that we are hybrids. And we may have been hybridized by them, and they themselves may be hybrids, in order to get back to the true story and why it's so secret. If President Biden all of a sudden says we're all alien hybrids, the stock market would plunge. We have to have this controlled dissemination, a little at a time. We already know about the craft. Okay, there's things in the sky. Great. And now for the first time, somebody in the position of authority, like the DNI, Avril Haines, said there is an extraterrestrial component to this. That's the second thing that needs to be talked about, and go from there. He's actually referring to Avril Haines, the director of national intelligence at the time, on November 10th, 2021, speaking at the Our Future in Space event. She was asked about UAPs, and she said, always, there's also the question of, is there something else that we simply do not understand, which might come extraterrestrially? And the next day, there was a headline, UFOs, alien bombshell, UFOs buzzing US warships, maybe aliens, as encounters show something we don't understand, says America's top chief spy. So very interesting, the seeding aspect. shaping us. So in The Rising, in my book, back in ancient human history, when humans, sorry, this is the 23rd contact event, and is the presenter, a gray alien, telling us, the people I was with, back in ancient human history, when humans couldn't fend for themselves, we made beings like you, but those genes are lost and long gone. They're immersed in the population, and we have been looking for them again, and we found them with you. Her telepathic transmission distinctly felt like she was referring to prehistory. Over 100,000 years ago, they made humans mixed with gray alien DNA, hybrids. Several other lines about how their influence on us. We make life. This is the third contact event. We make life. This is what we do. And we understand the integration of spirit with biology. We are engineers for ways of living for souls. We understand how biology manifests specific spiritual perceptions so souls can go into those bodies when they seek those types of experiences. We are the highest type of life engineers. And in the 10th contact event, the twin told me, we created this brain and this grabbing function. I asked, why did you create a brain to have a grabbing function? He replied, because it was perfect for the time, as it helped develop your society, to pull them out of their less developed ways. It was there just enough to develop your society, but you always had the capability of not using it. It has always been a choice, but you've developed your world around it now, and it's too late to change. But again, that's the shaping aspect. They nurture us. So in my first contact event, the elder called themselves the humanity's agents of change. And at one point in telepathy, which was very pronounced, and I still talk about it, she called themselves the stewards of the planet, which would be kind of a nurturing aspect.
Do you believe that the phenomenon is the next big, great religion in the world?
I basically. The phenomenon has probably already influenced all the other religions already, so it's just, maybe we're looking at the source code.
If you're looking at the source code.
We're at the graphic user interface level. It's like IP header, and we're finally getting into the information flow.
And they influence us. So I asked in my 10th contact event, when else were you in history? In response, he gave me an image of the Nazi swastika, implying contact with the German Nazi Reich. I felt layers of information with this image. I knew it was the first time they revealed themselves as aliens from another planet, with their face fully exposed, knowing the discomfort it is to humans, to impart their seriousness and urgency for the warning of the future. I felt clearly from before this period, for some time, they were coming in disguise, gently trying to persuade humanity in a different direction. He continued, we showed up in your 1600s, seeing the direction your planet was taking, making every effort to gently curb the population, but the grabbing function of the mind was too strong. It had already planted itself in so many different facets of your society, including in your human religion. The 1600s, that's a really wild thing to say. And yet, we actually have a recorded, what appears to be an abduction from the 1600s. On March 1st, 1639, John Winthrop opened his diary in which he recorded the trials and triumphs of his fellow Puritans as they made a new life in America. So he's talking about James Everall, a sober and discreet man. So he records that they saw a light in the sky. It stood still, they were on the river, and they were on a boat, and they watched a light in the sky stood still and flame up. It was about 3 yards square. When it ran, it was contracted into the figure of a swine. Over the course of 2 to 3 hours, the boatman said the mysterious light ran as swift as an arrow. The governor wrote that when the strange apparition finally faded away, the 3 Puritans in their boat were stunned to find themselves 1 mile upstream, as if the light had transported them there. The men had no memory of their rowing against the tide, although it's possible they could have been carried by the wind or reversed tidal flow. The mysterious repositioning of the boat could suggest that they were unaware of part of their experience. Some researchers would interpret this as a possible alien abduction if it happened today. And that was in Boston, by the way, in 1639. So just wanted to add in there that the twin telling me that they were that they had been here is just all very interesting, and that they were trying to influence us. This is very controversial, and it's in my first edition of the book and not the second edition. Listen, I keep being right about everything. And when the lid is off about how the aliens have been influencing us, I'm telling you, we're going to find that Heaven's Gate was an experiment of gray aliens, just like I was. Not that I believe that they were aware of that contact, but I explain why I believe that in the first edition of my book, though it didn't make it to the second. But it's just very interesting. I do think that these people had something going on with them, yet just like me, the Greys kind of said, we're going to give you this stuff and now you figure it out for yourself. And it's something kind of like that I think happened with them. Anyway, I'm just putting that on paper here because I'm convinced something like that we're going to find out stuff like that. GOP congressman suggests UFOs may be ancient civilization. On June 28th, 2023, Newsweek published an article titled Representative Mike Gallagher discussed various theories about the potential origins of alien sightings while appearing on the Pat McCaff show. Amongst other ideas, Gallagher suggested it could actually be an ancient civilization that's just been hiding here and is suddenly showing itself. Bernardo Castrop, having 2 PhDs, one in philosophy and computer engineering, a successful businessman, a scientist. Bernardo has worked for the European Organization for Nuclear Research and the Phillips Research Laboratories. And he says, within the next 20 years, perhaps sooner, we will witness 3 tightly interrelated gigantic revolutions in our understanding of reality. The official recognition of the presence and role of non-human intelligence throughout our history, the rejection of physicalism and embracement of idealism as the only plausible metaphysics, and a new understanding of the nature of time that will revolutionize the ontological status of past and future, as well as our understanding of the meaning of birth and death. So I think these are the facts now. They definitely seeded us. They definitely shaped us. They nurture us and they monitor us. And they influence us, and they are definitely interested in an apotheosis, God realization, which is basically if you believe my story, then that's where this all goes, is the entities themselves know how to make a human self-realized. And they would appear to be interested in those things. And maybe, if they seeded us, then there's something going on here where that's part of the bigger picture. Very interesting.